Hello, welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race NASCAR Cup Series at Pocono Raceway for the Pennsylvania Gateway to the Great America 400 race. Very excited, the Great American Getaway 400, excuse me. Joe San Diego with me. We have Tyler Smith, editor from Pit Box Press, and Matthew Bro from Grid Network TV. A big thank you to our Patreon investors on the show, Mark, Robin, David, for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. You two get your name on the leaderboard. And of course, with your name on the leaderboard, we'll thank you each and every month, each and every episode. And buy me a coffee, YouTube Super Chat, if you want to do a one-time investment through the Grid Network and social media, Grid Network TV. Subscribe, hit that bell icon, the simplest way to show your appreciation for all of us here at the Grid Network team. Let's get started with Pocono. Last weekend, we were at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez circuit, one of the longest straightaways there, where the start finish line is towards the last corner, so you have a long time accelerate compared to Pocono, a little bit more towards the center. Now with Pocono, their long front stretch, one of the longest in NASCAR. This track has a history with NASCAR, dating back years ago, two races, some iconic moments here. One of the ones that stand out the most to me was when Jeremy Mayfield got his first win over Dale Earnhardt Sr. Overall, though, this race has gone from two events down to one. Then they had a doubleheader in 2021, and now they're just down to one date. So, Matthew, starting with you, we saw Michigan 2 weeks ago, which is down to one race. Pocono's the same situation, stuck with just one date. Overall, do you feel like Pocono should just be stuck with one date or maybe 2 dates? Or what about even that doubleheader idea?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I was actually at one of my first Cup races I ever attended in person was that Pocono doubleheader in 2021, and it's the last one they ever had. So I got to see the trucks and Xfinity on Saturday, Sunday, and then Cup on Saturday, Sunday. It was an awesome experience, especially coming out of COVID. Just what they were able to put on a show, and obviously it was it was just over a full year when everything started, so everyone was a little antsy, but it was such a fun experience. However, just because I had a lot of fun, I think I kind of agree with most of the people at Grid Network TV. Just I think a lot of the tracks really should only have one date, regardless of how good the product is, because there's so many tracks you can go to. Michigan, I know I talked a couple weeks ago, like that could be one of them. And sure, Pocono, I think, always puts on a show as well, especially anytime Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson seem to be close to each other. Something always happens. So that's exciting. But I do like the idea of the doubleheader. But hear me out, though. I think the reason why is more or less not because of the tracks, but because of this grueling schedule these drivers get under in NASCAR specifically. How they have every week from the All-Star break, or I think it's like the All-Star break, up until the end of the season, just every single week they're somewhere racing. So I propose to NASCAR, if you're going to do a couple tracks, maybe give these drivers 3 weeks off throughout the season, but have one of those tracks, if you're going to have Pocono, do a doubleheader, do 275% of the original 100 laps, something like that. And you'd have to work with, Xfinity trucks, so on and so forth. And obviously how they did that a lot during COVID, where they had double races, and they had to just because of the circumstances. Obviously, those circumstances no longer apply towards the scheduling of these events. But just to more or less just to give the drivers some time, whether it's a doubleheader at Pocono, whether you do something, if you really want Kansas to have 2 dates, do them both at the same Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, something like that. But in terms of other tracks, though, now I'm going to backtrack. In terms of tracks having 2 dates, it's not many really should, even if the product's great. Homestead does a great job, always has. Michigan did a great job, but that doesn't mean it's going to be great every time. So I think we'll keep it to one date for now. It's been that way for a few years, but you never know. I think the only way tracks should have 2 dates now, besides maybe the usual Daytona, is to do double headers just to give drivers more time to, enjoy their families, because they were all a lot of new fathers were in Mexico City not celebrating Father's Day. So
Yeah, so as far as Pocono picking up a second date again, I kind of align with the thought that most tracks should have just one date. I feel like Pocono, while it provides a unique racing experience, which is something I did mention about Michigan not too long ago when I made the case for it getting a second date, I felt that Pocono, while it does provide an interesting layout that is one of a kind, you could say the same thing about Indianapolis, and I would never advocate for us to race there twice in a year. So, um, while I enjoy Pocono and the racing it puts on, and I think that its brand of racing is a bit unique to the Cup Series calendar because of its extremely long straightaway and its three unique turns that can often lead to a fuel mileage race, and I particularly enjoy those. I think that for the health of the Cup Series schedule, I don't think Pocono is a great candidate for a second date because of its location, not because it's in Pennsylvania, because I love that state, but more so because they just have so few warm months of the year. And honestly, going to a track like that where grip is absolutely necessary to performance, I just feel like running on a track like that when it's even like 60 degrees would probably put on a suboptimal racing product, which obviously nobody wants to see. And I think the old way of doing things, where we kind of had them staggered about 8 physical weeks apart, not 8 race weeks apart, wasn't exactly a great strategy either. I think if Pocono were to get a second race date, I think a few things are standing in its way. One, the alleged Philadelphia street race that is apparently reported by Adam Stern of Sports Business Journal. I mean, I think that'd be a really interesting concept. But moving on from that, that time of year that I mentioned for warm months kind of stands in its way. And on top of all of that, it's an independently owned racetrack, and NASCAR has a big aversion to most tracks that are independently owned in terms of giving them a second date or giving them a date at all, looking at you, Road America. So, yeah, I think that while it would be great for the fans of Pennsylvania and most of the Northeast, obviously, Matthew, you're not based in Pennsylvania, but for most fans in the Northeast, it would be great for them to have a second date up there. But at the end of the day, I also think that it could cannibalize people like Matthew and those that live in the New England area from going to somewhere like Watkins Glen, somewhere like New Hampshire, somewhere like, God forbid, even Dover, if you wanted to make the real long trip down. So, yeah, while it would be great if Pocono got a second date, I just don't think that it really fits unless we expand the idea of Cup dates in the schedule and take out weeks. So that way we have more double headers, more races, and more off weeks. So unless NASCAR gets real flexible and amenable with their schedule, I highly doubt that it's going to happen.
More off weeks will be huge for the sport and for the drivers. I feel one off week, I get it. Everybody wants to watch car racing, but you got to give these teams, these drivers a break, some time to rest up. For a lot of these drivers, of course, what a trek. Michigan, Mexico City, Pocono, Denny Hamlin. He hasn't done that, but we'll talk a little bit about him because when you look at everything that has happened since Mexico, all the talk has been Shane Van Gisbergen. And of course, the point stands, big shakeup because now he is in the playoff picture with a win when he's 30th in the regular points. So overall, he entered that race weekend 33rd, outside the points of the top 30. Now he's with it. He's in the playoffs. Pocono has a history of first-time winners. As I mentioned, Jeremy Mayfield got his first win fighting Dale Earnhardt. Denny Hamlin, of course, his first start at Pocono, he got there, got a win. Chris Buescher, granted that was weather-related, dense fog, and Ryan Blaney, last driver to do that with the Wood brothers, holding off a hard-charging Kevin Harvick. Shane Van Gisbergen already has 2 wins, but both of them road courses. Chicago, Mexico City, first time NASCAR Cup Series racing on both tracks. Both tracks had weather situation, so it gave him an upper hand. Overall, Tanner, is Shane Van Gisbergen a winning contender? And if not, what would be a good result for him at Pocono?
To answer the first part of the question, absolutely not, unless something crazy happens, which at Pocono we have seen many crazy things happen. We've seen a car hit a tree, which I didn't think was possible in the year 2009, but apparently it was. We've seen a Wood Brothers car drive to victory at that track. Many people didn't suspect that coming into that race. But with all that said, if SVG wins an oval this weekend, I think everybody in the sport would be completely surprised, especially if it was in the same way that he won last week, which was in dominating fashion. Here's the thing. If SVG can get a top 15, top 20, and stay on the lead lap, that's a successful day at Pocono for that team. I do think that it does lend somewhat to his skill set in that we saw a lot of road course inclined drivers in the past have a lot of success at Pocono when it was more to do with shifting. But now that everybody shifts at practically every track, that advantage he may have had kind of gets neutralized to some extent. So I think a top 20, a top 15 would be a fantastic day for the 88 team, but I don't see them having a chance against some of the titans of the sport, the Hamlins, the Blaney's, the Larsons of the world. So if SVG goes out there and, puts the world on notice by winning a second race and it's at an oval, then by all means, more power to him. But I also don't think it's an inherently inevitable thing for him to win at an oval either. I mean, he was never really in contention last year in the Xfinity series on the ovals. I know that he's with a strong team in Trackhouse, but Marcus Ambrose was a fantastic driver in the same series as Shane Van Gisbergen and was never able to get an oval win. Juan Pablo Montoya was one of the greatest drivers of his generation and never won on an oval in NASCAR. So I don't think it's a given that he wins on an oval ever, but I certainly don't think it's going to come this weekend. Oh.
Yeah, I don't think it'll come this weekend. I'm hoping Matthew Burrow comes back. I'm guessing some sort of technical issues. But one of the big things, if Shane Van Gisbergen somehow gets a surprise win, I think it will be something of circumstances, where it was a big crash taking up some of the contenders late in the race.
Fog,
rain, fuel mileage. If there's just something where he just happens to strike lightning, that's the best way I could see Shane Van Gisbergen getting the win. I think overall it's going to be one of those deals where you're going to be looking at one of the favorites, because we haven't had a whole lot of people that have gone there get their first wins. Like the list of names, yeah, Blaney, Hamlin, they've all gone on for bigger and better things. Hamlin just missing that championship, while Blaney, of course, claimed already a championship. But then you look at Chris Buescher, that was the fog that rolled in. Jeremy Mayfield, great opportunity with Penske at the time. Things didn't go great. Really, Everham was his second chance. After Everham, it just went downhill for Jeremy Mayfield. So overall, it's just one of those deals. I think he's going to have a really hard time trying to get into victory lane in any oval. I just don't see the tricky triangle being the place where it's going to happen. So I just think it's just going to be a challenge for everyone there. And overall, for Shane Van Gisbergen, I think a top 15 will be really, really good. So it's just a matter of wait to see how qualifying turns out, because I think that'll be a good indicator of how his team is looking. So
one thing I will say is that he does have the advantage of having two teammates that have had a very, solid resume at this particular racetrack. Daniel Suarez nearly won a 2018 race here when he was with JGR. Unfortunately, just didn't get the right launch on his final restart to, really contend with his teammate Kyle Busch. But you also look at Ross Chastain. He has also performed pretty well here in the past, save for last year. Looked to be in position to win that one race in 2022 that they had before Denny Hamlin ushered him into the wall. So, yeah, I mean, I think Trackhouse has shown that they're a very strong team at Pocono, but unfortunately, for one reason or another, they haven't gotten the win there. And I do think that having this third car, having another person to bounce off of with information could be helpful to the two strong trackhouse drivers on ovals. But like I said before, I just think that if it's going to come anywhere for Shane Van Gisbergen on the ovals, it's probably somewhere else that he has been to at least more than once. And he hasn't currently driven a cup car at Pocono to my knowledge. So wouldn't expect it to be this weekend. But Matthew, it's nice to have you back. What are your thoughts on SVG possibly stealing a win at Pocono?
And stuff. I have absolutely no idea what's going on. You probably still can't even hear me. But if if you can hear me, we're good. So I'm sorry I missed your answer, but I'm glad you guys kept talking. I'm trying to be quick with my point just in case. The weather hasn't come yet, which is weird. But even my mother just texted me and I said, "Oh no, what happened?" So I appreciate her for tuning in. But I think I can agree with your point, Tanner, that it won't be here. I don't think SVG, if it wins, I can't even say he's going to be a winning contender here. I think from here on out, the team has to manage just getting as many points as they can. I think honestly, just try to get stage points, as hard as that's going to be, because they're usually starting in the back unless it's on a road course. But a good result for him, I would say top 20, honestly. I mean, he sits 30th in points. I know the playoffs have him right now in 10th, but if there are 6 to 7 different winners in the next however many races before the playoffs, it's possible he could be the first one out if he doesn't get another road course win. So that's considering how far back he is in points, obviously. But a lot of guys like Joe and even you, Tanner, have mentioned have gotten wins here that have shocked people. You know, Ryan Blaney, who quickly turned this into a great track for him. Nobody thought he was going to outduel Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch that day. So it's going to be interesting to see. It really will be. Do I think he's a contender, though, to answer the question? No, I really don't. No offense to SVG. And if he were to win, I don't even know how to react to that. I don't think there had been anything. There wouldn't be anything that shocking in motorsport in the last couple of years if SVG were to somehow come out and win Pocono. He DNF'd, I believe, at Pocono in Xfinity. Never been here in a Cup car, like Tanner mentioned. So I think we're in for a treat. We're always in for a treat to watch SVG, honestly. So we'll see what happens.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Shane Van Gisbergen this race weekend. Now, one driver, 21st, so just missed our leaderboard for the top 20. Carson Hocevar. I think that's a driver everyone's going to be really curious as how he's going to do this race weekend. Of course, many people following everything that happened between his stream comments that he made during his live stream, then his comments after the race. Kobe, Josh, Matthew from Grid Tonight, I'll recap that. You can find out by checking out our profile. Guess the big question is, will that team, Carson Hocevar, Aspire Motorsport, be positioned towards the front, race for a potential top 5? Or could they have, with the negative attention, maybe a quiet weekend, just trying to run a solid race, not make any enemies, especially Ricky Stenhouse Jr.? He would love to just keep quiet and not have any runs with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Overall, Matthew, considering the timing of Pocono, this is not the kind of track where you're going to go out and just wreck somebody at such high speed. So if Hocevar has a quiet race weekend, doesn't upset Stenhouse again, will this allow Hocevar some time to avoid retaliation from Stenhouse?
I guess Ricky hasn't really run very well here either in the next gen era. So I think they're both probably going to be in the midfield. But it's going to, because like you said, there's not going to really be an intentional wreck at Pocono, and especially with the history of the track and how passings have happened here and stuff. It's like, you don't, gosh forbid, you wouldn't want to wreck someone at a high-speed track, which has one of the longest straightaways in the whole entire sport. I just think that's dangerous. I think Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is a veteran of the sport. He's, I think, the third or fourth oldest guy in the Cup Series in terms of age. So for him, I think it'd be easier for Ricky to kind of keep that in this 22-year-old kid's mind. that he said, I'm going to beat your butt. He used a different word, but I'm not going to say it. And then obviously he's mentioned previously when he wrecked him at Nashville and then messing up in the braking and taking Stenhouse out again. Ricky, I believe, is smart enough to play that like Hocevar, I still owe you at least one. And just keep that in the back of your mind because it's coming. It might be here or it might be in a couple weeks. You never know with that. So I don't know if they're going to be close enough on the track, but also Hocevar has had a couple great runs. Mexico City, I think Hocevar wants to delete that entire country from his mind for the last couple of months. Just how he just did poorly there in the field. But in terms of the weeks before, he was running really well, and then the left rear tire, I think, a couple times, even in the truck race too, had an incident. So I don't know if he'll have a quiet race weekend, but I know Stenhouse is going to play the game mentally. I think with him, be like, I'm here. I might not wreck you, but just know I'm going to it inevitably. So we'll see what happens. I don't think Ricky does it this week though.
Let's get one thing straight first. Carson Hocevar discarding Mexico and Mexico City is exactly what got him into this position, and I don't think he'll make that mistake anymore. So, as for Stenhouse, for my NASCAR Thunder 2004 fans out there, Ricky Stenhouse currently, if you're sitting behind the wheel of the 77 car, has a bright red minus 100 beside him, and he is a certified rival. So it would behoove Hocevar to not qualify anywhere near the 47 car and not be anywhere around him for much of the race, because I think that at Pocono, as we have discussed, it would be extremely irresponsible and frankly reckless and dangerous, which if we're talking frankly about Ricky Stenhouse, those are kind of synonyms that you could have for him. I just think that this year he's shown that he's a much more measured and intelligent competitor than he has shown previously. So with that in mind, I'm going to assume that he will understand the gravity of the situation of potentially wrecking someone at a place like Pocono and putting them driver's side first into the wall. So with that in mind, I would just imagine that Stenhouse, if he and Hocevar are racing around each other, he's just going to make himself extremely hard to pass. Very Ryan Newman, kidney stone like. As far as Hocevar's performance this weekend, I actually do have some, I do have some encouragement based on how they performed at Michigan, another high-speed oval. I think that while those tracks are inherently different, I do think that the principles of them are somewhat the same. This track will also give us a pretty good indication on which teams will be strong at Indianapolis here in about a month, which is insane to say. I mean, we are blowing through 2025. But yeah, I think it's impossible for Carson Hocevar to have a quiet weekend. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that he will likely be fighting for stage points, and if he and his crew chief can kind of orchestrate a good strategy throughout the race, they can definitely set themselves up to contend for this win, and I wouldn't really be surprised to see them up front. But yeah, I think that Carson Hocevar is really good at compartmentalizing. I know that sounds insane after what we just witnessed this past weekend, but at the same time, you've got to look back at Nashville where he faced adversity. He wrecked a guy in the beginning of stage 2 and managed to climb all the way from the mid-20s all the way back up to second. So I don't think it's impossible to think that he's going to kind of put everything that happened this past weekend in the rear view while also acknowledging his mistakes, which I can't say enough I appreciate him for doing, because it could have been just as easy to dig his heels in and play the victim in all of this. But yeah, I think that Hocevar is probably going to try to come back just as strong as he did at Michigan and hopefully not lose a tire with 20 laps to go. So if you see that 77 car up front this weekend, don't be surprised.
Doesn't want to lose a tire, doesn't want an engine to blow, doesn't want any bad luck. Carson Hocevar, if he could get up towards the front, I think he'll still be making a statement. And as you mentioned, racing away from Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who might be mid-pack if he's having a good day, that 47 team only just a bit outside. One of those big things I think with this track, if you're good at it, you're very likely to win. Look at Ryan Blaney, his first career here. Well, last year Ryan Blaney won this event. Now Denny Hamlin, he leads all active drivers with the most wins at this track. He won here in 2022. Of course, Chase Elliott the year before that after a double disqualification for Hamlin and Kyle Busch. So really, Denny Hamlin won the best at this track. All three manufacturers, when you look at the last 3 years of Ford, Toyota, Chevrolet, granted Chevrolet through disqualification, they all seem like they have a good shot at winning. So Tanner, do you see a particular manufacturer at an advantage or disadvantage in Pocono this weekend?
Not really. And I'm, specifically looking back to Michigan again because it does share a lot of similar properties in terms of, the kind of engine and the kind of downforce that you'll need for this kind of a track, especially in turn one and down the front straightaway. I think that we saw all three manufacturers run up front in Michigan. You had Carson Hocevar leading late on speed, on merit. You had Denny Hamlin winning that race after, spending much of the day up towards the front. And you also had Chris Buescher win the first stage of that race, as well as run up front for a good bit of it and then finish second. So I think as far as like a manufacturer having an advantage here, I don't think there's a clear answer because they have all shown speed at a large track this year. But at the same time, I think that if you're looking at drivers and the attributes that they bring, I do think that a team or a manufacturer like Toyota does kind of have a bit of a leg up on the competition. You obviously have teams in that camp such as 2311, who Bubba Wallace has had strong runs here in the past. Tyler Reddick has finished very well here since he joined 2311. But I mean, and I can't really speak for Riley Herbst because we just haven't seen him at Pocono in a 2311 car, so I'm obviously not going to speak on him. But you have, Briscoe, Hamlin, who is the greatest of all time at this track. Christopher Bell has had some strong performances here, and Ty Gibbs, I believe, sat on the pole last year before an engine put him out of the race. So I would definitely say that Toyota, in terms of who they have. I mean, Eric Jones has had strong runs here. I'm sure John Hunter Nemechek can put together a strong run here if he's given the right opportunity. I just feel like Toyota, if anybody, has probably the driver advantage over the other teams. But at the same time, I think if we're talking about purely the manufacturers and the cars themselves, nobody has a clear advantage here.
And yeah, I mean, absolutely. I can agree with that. And I was going to touch on, although I couldn't really say, like Tanner was saying, there really isn't a distinct advantage. However, I think Toyota, if there was one, I would go with Toyota too, in the sense where, the lowest average finish here in the next gen era is actually Tyler Reddick. And it would be Denny Hamlin if it wasn't for getting disqualified. So Tyler Reddick, he hasn't won here yet, but he's finished second, and his worst finish here is sixth in the next gen. Obviously, one of those was with RCR, but still. And then you look at active drivers with the best average finishes strictly in the next gen era. Christopher Bell is third, Bubba Wallace is fourth, even Eric Jones is sixth here in terms of Cup Series drivers in the last three races here. Kind of shows, and then Denny Hamlin is technically ninth, even though he would be first, if it, obviously, like I just said, with the disqualification. So I kind of want to say Toyota's almost at a little bit of an advantage, just where you have Bell, who's one of the best drivers in the sport. Hamlin's one of the best drivers in the sport. Joe Gibbs seems to, if it's not Hamlin, it was one of those, whether it was the 18 with Kyle Busch or the 19 with Martin Truex, seemed to own this track for quite a while. So that's who I think would have the advantage. And I honestly, sometimes Ford worries me a little bit here. And I know Ryan Blaney, obviously, one of the best, and he's won here twice. But the only other Ford in the last decade to win here that's active, so not Harvick, but an active driver, was Chris Buescher winning his first race in 2016 when he was with, I think, Front Row in the 34 with the fog. I think, yeah. So it's been so. Chris Buescher's kind of had a very long career, and I don't think we give him credit for how good he's really become, and even in Xfinity. But that kind of worries me in the Ford camp that your only two drivers that have won are Blaney and Buescher here, besides Keselowski back in I think 2011 or something like that. But still, in the last decade, you've only had two different drivers active win here, so that puts him at kind of a disadvantage in the sense. But it wouldn't shock me one bit if Ryan Blaney went back to back. It wouldn't shock me one bit. Chris Buescher's had so much pace lately. He's just at the last second something seems to be happening, or he doesn't have enough time. I wouldn't even be surprised if Ryan Preece shows pace here. I know this isn't his best track, but RFK, Brad has the best average out of these three, but Buescher and Preece, I should say, seem to be the fastest because even SVG is ahead of Keselowski in points right now. I don't want to go into that, but yeah, that's kind of how I'll leave it there. There might not be a strict advantage, but I think at Toyota, if it's anything, more of the drivers just being good here.
Preece might show out in the Northeast. You do have a point there.
Yeah.
I'll throw this follow-up question. We have Penske, Logano, Cindric, Blaney,
Barry.
Wood Brothers with Josh Berry. Wood Brothers don't have to win here. RFK, I feel Preece could be up there. Maybe Buescher. Brad, it seems to be hit or miss. And then front row, I think, are way distant. So I guess as a quick follow-up, which team do you see most likely up front? I'm thinking the Wood Brothers, actually.
Well, yeah, but they have a strong average on their hands. They only have one car. I would say of the major teams, I would say that Penske probably has the best shot. And that's only because I just don't know what Riley Herbst is going to be capable of in the third 2311 car, because I think Bubba and Reddick will be strong all weekend. But yeah, as far as like the big teams and who I think can get the most out of all of their cars, I would say that Penske / Wood Brothers probably has the strongest shot. I think Cindric will be relatively strong here this weekend. I think Blaney will be a contender for the win, and Logano will probably be somewhere on the 4th to 11th range. So, yeah, I think that Penske probably has the best shot, but 2311 may have the highest variance of them all outside of Herbst.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, thinking too, I know 2311 would be a threat in the Toyota camp. I think for Ford though too, I want to break that down. I feel like it's going to be interesting to see, because I would argue that Keselowski, if you look at it like in all the races here, if you don't include the next gen, Brad Keselowski actually has the second lowest average finish of all Cup drivers here active, and he only has one win. And I think it'd be different if Hamlin didn't get disqualified, or whatever. William Byron actually has the lowest average finish here, which I think is very interesting, just in general, their careers. So he's another threat. But Penske, I want to narrow that down to Penske and Wood Brothers versus RFK, because Blaney's one of those guys, I think he's a threat everywhere. And then you have someone like Chris Buescher, who lately I believe is becoming a threat everywhere. I think Buescher might be the most underrated driver in the Cup Series just lately. He's got pace almost everywhere, and sometimes when his team owner doesn't, and that's why it's going to be interesting. I think Keselowski knows enough about Pocono that I would put them in the contention over Penske. It's just tough because Blaney is going to finish, hopefully, probably for him in the top 5. But then sometimes with Logano and Cindric, I don't know about you, Tanner, or you, Joe, but it's like sometimes they're up in the top 10, and other times, like at Mexico City, was Logano even in the picture at all at any stretch? Like, it just seems like the only highlight for Logano's race was him getting passed by 3 cars in the final 2 laps. And that's really all that happened to him. So he's one of those drivers that comes up, and if he has the pace, he's going to be in the top 5. But a lot of the times he shows up and he runs 10th to 15th. So I guess we'll see there. But I'm going to actually think RFK and Buescher might do better than Penske this week in terms of if you average the 3 cars. Hopefully we could talk about this in the Slack chat. We'll add up the 3 finishes of Penske and RFK, even if you want to count Barry, and then whoever finishes the top 3 of those 4 guys, and then see who has the lowest average finish of those guys. So I think that'll be exciting. Something we could do off the screen.
I think it'd also be good to do just to see how many points they all earn as well. I think that that'll be an important factor as well.
It's probably more important, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, 2 stage wins by any driver, if they finish 12th, they still got a lot of good points. So it'll be really interesting to see how the Fords all battle out. And definitely, I think it'll be fun to share the results too during the wrap up show. Now, of course, the Penske drivers, everyone, they're sort of chasing, in my opinion, William Byron, Hendrick Motorsports, of course, Kyle Larson also has 3 wins. Byron, though, regular season standings, 67-point lead. So overall, he has a healthy points lead, but he has no wins here. You look at Kyle Larson, Cup Series, no wins here. Christopher Bell, who's third in the standings, also no wins here. That means Denny Hamlin, the only driver with wins when you look at the top 4 drivers in the point standard. I just find that fascinating because then you got Ryan Blaney right behind. So overall, do you think any of those top 3 drivers can secure a win? Or do you think somebody else is more likely to? Because I feel like out of those 3, Byron, Larson, and Bell, they're favorites, but there's plenty of other strong drivers out there that can win.
Yeah, for me, I think it's funny, and I think I've said to you guys before, is that there's only 3 in the NASCAR Cup Series that I would pick to win in all 36 regular season races. And it's the 3 that you just mentioned. I think Larson, Byron, and Bell are the 3. Blaney's up there. It's just the road course consistency hasn't been there as much lately. I think he's obviously good at road course.
Oh.
Of course, he's won at the road with him because he's never won there, but he's come pretty close, surprisingly. So, yeah, I think those 3 can definitely secure a win. Byron being the best there without a win in the Cup Series. And Larson's just good there, and then Hamlin and him got into it. And then Bell has not won here yet, and he's pretty good. So one of those 3. But honestly, those 3 could win, but there's others. Busher, I think there. Denny Hamlin's obviously think he could win here. Denny Hamlin, it reminds me a lot of, which I want to ask the people, would you take Denny Hamlin at Pocono or Kevin Harvick at Phoenix? Which, it's just those 2 seem to own those tracks. 2 of the best to ever do it. So be interesting to see what happens with them. But I don't know what's going to happen. Hey, I think even Chase Elliott could be a quiet factor. He's due for a win. And even Bowman's won here before. I was there live in person when Larson blew a tire and hit the wall when he was going quest for 4 in a row. That was the craziest live experience I've ever had at a race. But yeah, the long story short, I think any of those 3 that you mentioned, Larson, Byron, and Bell, could get it done. But I wouldn't be surprised if you saw someone like Hamlin, Blaney, any of those guys get it done as well.
To answer Matthew's little hypothetical, I wouldn't take either Harvick at Phoenix or Hamlin at Pocono. I would take Jimmy Johnson at Dover. But now to get back to the question at hand. So I would say that Byron probably has the less chance of the 3, even though he has the better average finish of this group. I keep waiting on that team to fall off the cliff like they always do in the summertime, and it hasn't quite happened yet, but it's going to happen eventually, and I just don't foresee them winning a race, anytime soon. Now, as far as the other 2 here, Kyle Larson has done enough to win here and just hasn't, so I would put him higher than Bell here to get the victory this weekend, but he's not going to be my pick. As much as I am a big fan of Bell and his talent, I just don't think that he's going to be able to pull it off this weekend. That team just hasn't had race-winning pace since they won those 3 races in a row to start the year, and I just don't foresee that picking back up now. As far as what Matthew said earlier about the 3 teams that he'd have to win all 36 races, I don't agree with that statement at all, but I do agree that Kyle Larson would be the guy that I would say could win at all 36 races. He's the only driver I could see winning at all 36 theoretically. And even then, that's still kind of a stretch because he's not exactly the greatest super speedway racer, and there's 6 of those on the calendar. So, yeah, I think that any of those 3 could win, but if I had to order them, it would be Larson, Bell, Byron.
Interesting to see what will happen this race weekend in Pocono. In the chat, we encourage everyone to share their comments and opinions with us. Denver, one of our regulars, thank you for joining us, Denver. I think it's an absolute joke that SVG's getting flagged from fans for turning up the NASCAR Cup Series field. It's a clear indication that NASCAR Cup field needs to step up their game on road courses. If Will Brown, Brock Feeney won both Xfinity Cups in Chicago, it will be a clear indictment of both fields and skills on the road courses. Now, Tanner Matthew, this reminds me of comments by Richard Petty, I believe it was this week, saying that NASCAR is not road course racing. And I understand when you look at NASCAR, the history has been you go to the short track in your southeast, your local area, oval racing. But I gotta say, I feel like now this new breed of NASCAR, where it's like, okay, you have your short track, you have your medium, mile and a half ovals, the super speedways. I feel road courses are now an integral part of that season, whether it's the natural road courses. There's the rumor of, okay, if we're not in Chicago next year, it might be in San Diego or Philadelphia, completely opposite sides of the country. Even the Xfinity Series, we know they've done Mexico before. They got Portland, Road America, more frequent than the Cup Series. So overall, do you feel this is something where the Cup Series drivers, granted, they are, I think, at least taking this a lot more, they're in the similars and everything, but do you agree with sort of that statement that some of these fans ripping on SVG for dominating? Tanner, I'll start with you on that one.
The first thing I want to do is address Richard Petty's comments, and they come from a place for him because he grew up in a time where we ran 100-mile races on a quarter-mile oval. So, like, I can kind of understand from his aspect that, like, road courses and us going into international markets and not on ovals kind of threatens the idea of NASCAR that he had when he was the top dog of the sport. Obviously, he was the king after all, and still is. But at the end of the day, NASCAR racing, as it is and as it lives, is a stock car sport. So if we put a stock car on anything, a street, dirt, ice, road course, any of that, it's a NASCAR track as far as I'm concerned. So I feel like this whole old fogey way of thinking is regressive and not pushing the sport forward. Granted, I don't think that we should lose the identity of the sport as an oval racing series like IndyCar has, but I also think that branching out into international markets is important, and doing that any way that you can while not sacrificing the racing product too much is ultimately a great thing for the sport. With all that said, to tackle what Denver said, and we appreciate you dropping your comment in the chat, I kind of agree. Like, the Cup Series drivers need to stop letting him absolutely whoop on them like he has been, as Matthew will likely say, putting belt to behind. So, yeah, I feel like it's definitely kind of low-hanging fruit to be, dunking on SVG's playoff berth from this. And I just find any comparison to Harrison Burton's win last year to be kind of laughable. We're talking about a guy that's already won a NASCAR Cup Series race on a road course. He's doing it again, whereas Harrison Burton in his 100th-ish start finally breaks through out of nowhere to win a race at a track that is renowned for jackpot winners. So I just think that comparing those two in itself is just kind of missing the point, for lack of a better way of saying it. I do think that the Cup Series drivers really need to harness their skills on the road courses, but at the same time, they aren't populous enough in the playoffs for drivers to really care about them. If, like last year, we had 2 of them in the last 10 races, that might galvanize them a bit more. But at the end of the day, I just feel like drivers are probably not going to prioritize it as much unless there is one in the round of 8. And frankly, I don't want to see the Roval there. And I don't think any of the other road courses stand a chance as, like, in terms of like the weather that time of year to host a race that late in the playoffs. So it kind of goes back to our Pocono question earlier and getting a second date. It just falls at such a bad time of year in the playoffs for most of these road courses that we have to host a date. So I just don't foresee that as possible. And until we get a road course deep into the playoffs, I just don't think most of the regulars are going to take it as seriously as they should.
Yeah. For me, I want to kind of do same order Tanner did. And I apologize. There's a thunderstorm rolling through. So if I keep lagging, I'm just going to blame the weather instead on my issues, not Spectrum. But for Richard Petty's comments, I get what he's saying, but at the same time, if I want to watch the same thing every week, I'll go tune in the Track TV at ASA National Tour where I can watch guys like Dawson Sutton, Ty Majeski, Gavin Bushell, George Phillips, another Toyota up-and-coming driver. If I want to watch the same thing every week, I'll go tune in that. Or I'll go to the Cars Tour on Flow Racing. I'll tune in to watch Landon Lewis or Connor Hall or one of those guys. This NASCAR is not what it was 75 years ago. It's not what it was 50 years ago, and it's not what it was 25 years ago. I appreciate the King. He's done wonderful things for the sport. But at the same time, you got to realize it's not the same quarter mile, half mile stuff it used to be where they were racing 3 times a week and stuff. It's different. NASCAR has the most diverse schedule in all of motorsport. I mean, you can argue, I guess, IndyCar too, right? Does ovals and stuff. But NASCAR is going from short track to super speedway to street course to an intermediate to then a actual road course. It's like, and the split is very fair too. I think 6 road courses, there's 36 races. So it's like you have the 6 there, you got 6 super speedway races, you have 6 short track or whatever you want to say. I think it's very well balanced. It's not 36 races of the same sort or 30 of the same short intermediate and then 6 super speedway. It's not like that anymore. So I'll tune if you want to watch the same thing every week. Spend $30 a month on Track TV or however much Flow Racing so you could watch the late model guys. That's just how I feel about that comment. But in terms of what Denver said, I appreciate with SVG and them. We even said Grid Network, if you guys have been here for along the journey, I've been here 3 years now, I believe. So thank you for that, Joe, obviously. Tanner's one of the newer ones, but we were covering SVG when he was doing belt to butt over in Australia, New Zealand area. So we knew that what was going to happen in Chicago. Everyone picked him for pick a winner. So we're ahead of the curve. He's obviously the grid ranking champion of 2022, I believe. And then even guys like Scott McLaughlin in IndyCar, we knew who he was prior to him going to IndyCar. He's been there a while, but still. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me one bit if Will Brown comes over, wins a race. Brock Feeney, I think he said his deal fell through, if I'm not mistaken. But still, he's another guy. I think he's his friend. Cam Waters is coming over. Cam Waters, I think, could win. Maybe if we get Chaz Mostert, maybe we get Brody Kostecki now in the Ford camp coming over. And now with some of the teams going to Toyota, I think we're going to be opening up more opportunities and then possibly a new manufacturer coming into NASCAR. Exactly. Just more people. I love it. I love the idea of it. So for that, and then people crapping on SVG, sure, it's like he's 30, whatever in points. But like Tanner said, it's a lot different than Harrison Burton, who's run the whole season, who's been in NASCAR his entire career, versus one of the greatest supercars drivers on Mount Rushmore over there, coming over, switching it up, and just every time you get on a road course, he's guaranteed a top 10 finish. So I think it's a lot different for that. And yeah, the guys got to up their game. SVG is just whether it's the technical braking, he just does it better. And he's learning a whole different thing. It's only his, third year in a car, second year in a car where they're on the other side of the car, if I'm not mistaken, using different paths. So it's like they got to catch up. They've been doing this a lot longer. And he said on one of the radio shows, I apologize for my voice gets higher when I'm ranting, but he said on one of the shows, it's like Justin Marks didn't sign him to come out and contend at short tracks or super speedways. Justin Marks signed him for 6 opportunities where he is the favorite there. What other drivers in the field besides maybe a Christopher Bell or a Kyle Larson or a William Byron that you can say confidently has the best chance of winning of the other 35 drivers at least 6 tracks? It's hard to say. So for us, I think it's a smart hire, and there's nothing stopping guys like RFK from going to try to get Cam Waters full time. There's nothing stopping a Chevrolet team like Spire from taking a chance on someone like Brock Feeney, like Will Brown, if they ever want to come over. So it's just one of those things. It's like, yes, I guess you can crap on him for being not as great at anything, but he's there to win a minimum of 1 race a year to get them into the playoffs and get them that extra financial boost to get them in the top 16. So he brings a sponsorship. Red Bull's back. Thank you. WeatherTech's here. That's awesome. So it's like, I don't know. Do you want SVG to, does he have to win an oval? Is that going to impress people? Does he have to come out and win an oval? Allmendinger never won on an oval in the Cup level, but he's after a while he learned and he won ovals in the Xfinity Series. So I don't. And Marcos Ambrose too, another one. But yeah, to end my rant, I kind of want to hear Joe and then Tanner. I think I want to hear from both of you guys again. It's like, what more do you want from SVG? He's there to do his job, and he's doing it quite well. So I don't know.
Yeah, to just kind of, piggyback off of what Denver said in the chat after we rolled their first 2 comments, I think that even if SVG wins all of the road courses hypothetically for the rest of the regular season, he still has to get through Darlington, which granted might be his best oval, but he's still like barely a top 20 guy. He has to get through Gateway, which is a hard track to pass at, and Bristol, where we saw him fall out of the race because he wrecked himself racing Cody Ware for dead last. And I hate to be that blunt, but that's just what it is. Like, he has a very low chance of getting through the playoffs at this rate. With that said, I think that it's important to remember that we're talking about a rookie here. SVG just completed his 30th start in a Cup Series car and got his 2nd win. Harrison Burton was on start 101, I believe, in his career and had been running ovals his entire life and could barely win one at Daytona, of all places. Not only that, if we're talking about like comparing SVG to another rookie that they could have given this car to, we already have that case study from last year in the 71 car with Zane Smith, which was powered by Trackhouse at Spire. Zane Smith, he is a great driver. I think that he is going to become a Cup winner at some point. But last year was not a banner year for that 71 team and his rookie season. He had a few flashes of brilliance at Nashville, outlasting most of his more experienced competition to finish 2nd in that 5 overtime nonsense. And then at Watkins Glen, where he finished 5th and was able to withstand the challenges again from more experienced drivers behind him. He was also very strong in Indianapolis, where had he not had to pit under caution there towards the end, would have come away with a top 5 finish. I just feel like if you're putting a rookie in a Cup Series car, the expectation should be that they learn and improve for the first year, maybe 2 years, and then they hopefully go out and win the 3rd year. When you put SVG, a rookie, in a Cup car right now, the expectation is to win, and he has fulfilled that promise. Granted, you're punting on the possibility of winning a championship this year because he's just not quite ironed out on the ovals yet, but at the end of the day, getting them in the playoffs helps get that team funding for a few more years, helps them propel themselves forward, gives them data to go off of and build around for the next couple of years. And I think that really is more important than, kind of tinkering around with a true rookie at the Cup level right now. With all that said, I think that SVG, putting any rookie in the car is kind of punting on winning a championship that first year. But with SVG, at least you're giving yourself a shot to get in the playoffs and have a possibility of maybe making something happen. But you couldn't say that about Zane Smith last year, which, again, is no disrespect to him. It just is what it is.
And one of the big things, as you point out, 2 wins in 30 starts. Granted, road courses, The scenarios of first time at the track, it was wet. This is part of modern NASCAR. This is part of the rule package we know going in. You get a win, you're in the playoffs. Those bonuses for being in the playoffs for the charter team and all that, you could really build a team around that. And I think of you look at what happened to Jensen Button. Comes here to do the road courses. Rick Ray Racing, granted with Stewart Haas support, we didn't see anything really from him. SVG, Project 91, goes out there and just wins it. And Jensen Button, I recall, spun around a couple times, including once near the entrance of the pit road where he almost got T-boned. So, I mean, what he's doing is super impressive. I just think it just speaks to what Justin Marks is doing. He knows what he's doing. You go out there, we've only run 2 road courses, so we still have 4 more. Shane Van Gisbergen gets 2 more wins. Guess what? 3 wins. He's now up there with the other drivers that have won 3 races each. That says a lot, and I would not be surprised if maybe another team decides in the future, hey, let's go for one of these supercar drivers. Let's go for a road course ace. Because, like you said, Matthew, 6 races, he is the favorite. I mean, DraftKings had him as a heavy favorite entering the weekend before qualifying even started before a practice lap, and he delivered. So Shane Van Gisbergen, always a threat to win. And thank Denver for that comment, getting us onto this topic as well. And I see another comment from Denver where he says, Steve Letarte said it best. Let SVG in the second round playoff. Shame on the Cup drivers for not knocking him out with Roval in the second round.
Sure.
Very dangerous.
He didn't win there last year in the Xfinity Series, so I don't know if that's a foolproof plan, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Add a follow-up to that, guys, if you don't mind. So 2 things. One, I mean, if you put SVG, Michael McDowell, Daniel Suarez, Chase Briscoe, and Bubba Wallace, all of those guys have exactly 2 Cup wins. SVG did it in a lot less time. And I know there's a different thing. I think most of those guys have been around, maybe not in the best equipment or whatever, but still, it doesn't matter. But my theoretical question I kind of have is, we saw this once in recent memory, and it was with 2311 with Bubba Wallace and when Ty Gibbs inevitably had to take over for Kurt Busch. If SVG does not make the second round of the playoffs, and granted, I'm going to bring up Suarez in this situation. Suarez is having a terrible year too. He's 28th in points. He really just not a great year. Do you switch the 99 and 88 for 9 of the 10 playoff, or at least 7 of the playoff races besides the Roval for owner's points? Because is Suarez going to out-earn SVG everywhere besides maybe the Roval? So let's get through the first round. If SVG doesn't make the next round of the playoffs, do you swap the numbers? Because it's going to be worth more money. So that's just my theoretical. Do you think that happens? Or
I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't know. A lot of it hinges on like how good is SVG on the ovals by the time the end of September rolls around. If he is pacing around Suarez, which I would doubt given the schedule towards the end of the season, because for Suarez, thankfully a lot of those tracks kind of lend to his skill set, especially the round of 8 being at Talladega, where he has had a number of strong runs in the past. But yeah, I think that those kind of moves are, though we have seen them in the past, are usually pretty unprecedented. So, I mean, it could happen. I wouldn't rule it out, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out yet. Just I guess a matter of how we see. Because I mean, if Suarez is 28th in points and you got Shane Van Gisbergen 30th now, all of a sudden those two are much closer. So plenty of time to see how that'll work out between those 2 drivers. But that is definitely something we'll be following, and of course, following everything leading up to the playoffs. Which the playoff picture you see there, 10 different winners so far this year. One of them, Denny Hamlin, 3 wins. Most at this track, Pocono, 7 wins total, but he missed last weekend. Birth of a baby boy, Jameson. He got his playoff waiver, and this was something too, going back to if you all watch the Dale Jr. download, where Dale Jr. responding to Richard Petty's comment of how back then in the day you miss high school graduations, you miss key moments in raising a family. Now there's more greater importance of you're there for the birth of a new baby, you're there for the milestones. So if Denny Hamlin missed Mexico City, essentially it's almost like he's gone for two consecutive race wins when you think of races he entered. This is something I cannot recall of a driver missing a weekend, not just for a birth of a baby, but a key milestone, personal moment, but the week before one, and now it's returning back. So Tanner Stein with you, could Denny Hamlin have the same momentum as if he just came off a win in Michigan had it been last week?
I mean, we're going to the track that he is the all-time wins leader on, and we've been racing there since 1969. So I would say that he's definitely got a great shot to go out there and go for effective two in a row, but not actually two in a row for the rest of the Cup Series drivers. I just feel like if you're picking against Denny at Pocono, you better be picking like Ryan Blaney and maybe Tyler Reddick, but that's really it. Yeah, I just feel like if we're talking about any other driver having their kid and coming back and they're going to any other racetrack, yeah, Denny's probably got like a pretty hard shot at going for two in a row. But we're going to Pocono, and he probably should come in this season well rested compared to his more well-traveled compatriots. So, yeah, if we're talking about Denny possibly going back to back, I've got to give my vote of confidence and say it's very likely for that to happen because he's so good here.
No, with 100% without a doubt. I mean, it's Denny Hamlin. You've seen multiple drivers are having children, but none of them have won, taken a little bit of time off to have the child and then come back and win again. I know Joe said he can't recall. I don't think it's ever happened in the history of the sport. However, I know there was a fun pack. I was doing research before the show, and I don't know if you guys remember. I was, I think, negative 10 years old at the time this happened. But Larry McReynolds actually won a race crew chiefing Davey Allison in the Winston, the All-Star race, and then had Brandon a couple days later, missed all the celebrations and came back and then won the Coke 600. So that's the only comparable thing I think that's ever happened, similar to having a child taking a little bit of time off, coming back and winning again. So for that, I think Denny Hamlin is one of those guys that I wouldn't bet against him at Pocono. I think, like Tanner mentioned, all these possible scenarios could have ever happened. But for Denny Hamlin to win, get a week rest, well, I guess, I mean, having a newborn is not really resting, but, you know, compared to being physical in the car. And then coming back to your holy grail, the track where you would have another win at if you get disqualified, the one that you were just better than anyone that's ever driven or set foot in that facility in Pocono. So, yeah, I think he definitely has the momentum. He should be the favorite to win this. And if it's not, like Tanner said, Ryan Blaney, maybe, you know, Kyle Larson's quick, but he hasn't shown his quickness. Obviously, he likes to bounce back from bad weeks. He had a terrible week at Mexico City, but hey, he can come back and win. So, well, I think we'll see what happens there. But for Denny Hamlin, it's the ideal, perfect situation where winning a good race, getting week rest, and coming back to your best track. So it wouldn't shock me if we saw Denny Hamlin in victory lane.
Denny Hamlin has to be one of the favorites this weekend. One driver I'm curious about, his young teammate Ty Gibbs. He had a strong run in Michigan, of course, a top 5 finish. Then in Mexico City, he brought the fight to Shane Van Gisbergen in the last weekend in Mexico. He said after the race, he felt like he had a shot to win, but had that caution came out a few seconds later, he would have been in potentially a great position to get that win. Ty Gibbs only finishes in the top 10 are 9th and 2 third place finishes, so just 3 total, 24th in the points. Matthew, do you anticipate Ty to be a contender? His best finish here at Pocono, 5th in 2023.
Yeah, and for me, I think if you've been with Grid Network, you know that I truly believe Ty Gibbs will be a Cup champion someday. And I've said it before. There's a dam, not the swear word dam, but like a water dam, that the win is coming and it's got to break through. And once it does break through and he gets it done finally at the Cup level, he is going to win a lot of races. I just truly believe it. He's Xfinity champion, he dominated in Xfinity. Every time he gets there, he's a contender, no matter where it was. And then at Cup, he hasn't had the same luck, but he's in the best equipment he could possibly be in. So his time is coming. I looked up DraftKings while we were talking. Denny Hamlin does have, or I'm on the NASCAR app. I'm not on the betting app, just to let you guys know. But Denny Hamlin has the best odds at plus 450. And then Kyle Larson, 550. Ryan Blaney, 700 with William Byron. Ty Gibbs is 12th, which he's plus 2,000, which doesn't seem bad. But considering how Ty Gibbs' season has gone, like Joe had just mentioned, only 3 top 10s, 2 of them were third place finishes, and then a 9th place finish randomly. Hasn't had the best luck. So for him to be considered the 12th best odds for this race really says a lot. And wouldn't it be bittersweet for him to come back to Pocono, the track where he made his Cup Series debut for the injured Kurt Busch, where it shocked everyone because it just happened really out of nowhere. And this young kid driving the number 45 McDonald's car had to come in. So wouldn't it kind of be bittersweet for him to join that list of the Chris Buescher, of the Jeremy Mayfield, of the Denny Hamlin, of the Ryan Blaney, getting their first win at the track? And I think Ty Gibbs truly can do it. The time is coming. I think he gets the win before Hocevar. I know we put out a poll. I did. Who's going to win first? Is it going to be Priest? Is it going to be Hocevar? Is it going to be Gibbs? I truly think it can be Ty Gibbs, and I would not be shocked if he could get it done this Sunday.
Matthew, I got to tell you, that was a beautiful spin you put on that. I'm not going to lie, but I'm going to disagree wholeheartedly with everything you said. I think that everything that I've seen from Ty Gibbs this year has talked me out of him being a future Cup champion. I thought he was going to get a win last year. It just never happened. And this year he had race-winning pace maybe twice. Now, granted, those are the last 2 weeks that he's had race-winning pace, but he got put in 9th last week at Mexico and fell back to 11th. Couldn't pass anybody. And with the cars ahead of him being on, slightly less fresh rubber, I thought he was going to eat him up like he did the previous restart. And he just didn't do anything. I feel like Ty Gibbs, if you give him the perfect scenario possible, he can go out and win a race. In the NASCAR Cup Series, you know how impossible that is. So, yeah, I think that he showed me a lot of bad last weekend for the amount of speed that he had. For him to not be able to progress through the pack, especially a pack that included Cole Custer and John Hunter Nemechek in it, left a really sour taste in my mouth as far as his racecraft is concerned. I just don't think he has the maturity or the ability to maintain his equipment at the Cup Series level to go out and win. I think that for him to go out and win this weekend, it would take a number of circumstances, and I think among them would be fresh tires and a late race restart and track position. And he's not going to have all 3 of those. So I think that what Matthew said was very nice and was really cool. And we are hovering around the Jackson Todd 100th start area, but I just don't see it. And I don't see it this season. I think that 54 team has kind of buried themselves in a confidence hole that I just don't see them digging themselves out of this season. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a change on top of the pit box before the end of the year is over to a potentially seasoned Cup Series crew chief that's worked with his car chief before. Hintity hint hint. So, yeah, I don't see it happening this weekend. I could see them having a good run, but I don't know. Every time I see that 54 team outside of Michigan have a good run this year, they shoot themselves in the foot one way or the other, and I have no indication that that's going to change this weekend.
Going to be very interesting to follow Ty Gibbs, Carson Hocevar, 2 drivers potentially knock on the door of a win, and for him to have a rookie crew chief, Michigan, that was great. I'm starting to wonder if this is just something where it's like what we compare to Chase Briscoe's crew chief. You got a rookie crew chief, you got a driver with not that much experience. Chasing the car throughout the race is just a little bit their weakness, and they start off the weekend wrong. that's where we see them 30th or worse at 54 team. It's going to be very interesting to see how they come out at Pocono. In the chat room, Denver, I picked Chase Elliott to win. I see Trackhouse is focusing on stage wins on ovals for SVG at this point. Well, Chase Elliott, not a bad pick, which means it's time for pick a winner. Looking at the leaderboard after last weekend, Matt, you and Kobe cannot get separated. Still tied at 33 each now. Matt White at 30. Tanner, you're still in fourth at 27 points. Josh T and rounds out the top five. And of course, we got MotoGP this weekend. So Kiska going with Mark Marquez all weekend long. So for everyone in the chat room, comment with who you think is going to win. The busy race weekend of Formula E. We have IndyCar, 2 MotoGP races, NASCAR, and 3 Supercar Series races. So a lot of races going on. Right here on the air, we're going to share our NASCAR picks for the NASCAR Cup Series in Pocono Raceway. So Tanner, starting with you, who is your pick a winner for the Great American Getaway 400 at Pocono?
My record thus far this season has definitely been skipping around the name Ryan Blaney a lot, and I'm gonna sell out and say it's gonna be the 12 team again. They were so strong at Homestead earlier this year, and when they went to Michigan, I thought they had a pretty good car that I think they kind of pushed a little too far with the tire load on that last run, and tire got soft and Blaney ended up in the wall. I don't think that'll happen here at Pocono, I should say. And I think they're going to go for 2 in a row and kind of stymie Denny Hamlin's chances of going back to back. And I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong, but Ryan Blaney is my tentative pick.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go tentative too. Last time Kobe and I were tied, there was 77 races on the weekend, and we both scored 5 points. So Kobe and I are like magnets together. Funny, we're the only grid champions. I joke with him. I'm trying to get 2 in a row from him, who had 3 in a row, I believe. So my tentative pick, last week I got it right. Usually I pick at the last second, as you guys see on X, is where I leave all my picks. I think I'm gonna stay with Denny Hamlin tentatively for now. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's someone like Ryan Blaney. And I really hope it's Ty Gibbs, just so Tanner and I can have fun. Tanner, if Ty Gibbs finishes in the top 5, can you send me some Code Red Zero? We don't get it in the Northeast. I'll send you the shipping if you could get it over here if Ty gets in the top 5. But I'm going to stay with Denny Hamlin for now.
I'll make sure it's free of charge if he can get a win this weekend.
Hey, you guys heard it on Grid Network.
Yeah, it's on tape. It's on tape, so it is certified.
On tape, on the cloud. I assume StreamYard doesn't use tape. If so, now need to go somewhere to use cloud technology. Overall, I like the Toyotas, but I also like the Fords. When it comes to Toyota, I'm looking at Bubba Wall's 2311, but I just feel like maybe they're a step behind. So then I'm leaning towards the Fords again. And I'm going to go with a driver I don't think I've picked this year yet. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm going to go with the 21. Josh Berry, the Wood brothers, getting the win. I think what's going to help them out get the win, they're going to be fast out of the gate. Pocono, the restarts, there's some chaos, but I feel like it's not too chaotic as some tracks, especially you survive the first 2 corners, which is turn 1 and then the tunnel corner. With the green flag pit stops, I see that going to be an advantage for the drivers that needs the win rather than needs the stage points. And I think that's where you're going to see the track position game for the 21 workout. They'll pit before the stage breaks, go for the race win, and get number 2. Josh Berry, that is my pick for pick a winner. And of course, encourage everyone to get your name on the board. The board is now up to 2 pages. San Diego last week correctly picked a winner. I can't exactly remember which race, but got on the leaderboard. So we got 27 people, 26 folks, 1 dog on the leaderboard for pick a winner. And of course, picks are only due right to before the start of each race. I also forgot to mention IMSA sailing 6 hours at the Glen. That's going to be another exciting race for the World Endurance Championship. We saw a big shakeup last race weekend at the Luma 24 hours in the chat room. Denver going with Marky Mark for MotoGP, Scott McLaughlin for IndyCar, Brock Feeding for race 1, and Cam Walsh for race 2, and Will Brown for race 3. We'll be recording all your picks. And just remember, if we see something like Scott McLaughlin starting dead last or something and he's like, I gotta change my pick, social media, hashtag pick a winner. That is the best way to get your picks updated. Just look for the official pick a winner. Hashtag, there it is, from Grid Network TV. We're on Facebook, Instagram, of course, X, Blue Sky, all over the place, and right here on YouTube. Subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. Women in Motorsports coming up later this race weekend, and then of course we'll wrap up everything from the busy race weekend. And very excited to again thank our Patreon investors, Colin, Michelle, Mark, Rob, David, and Matthew for investing in the Grid Network, keeping us on the air. For Matthew and Tanner, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races.